Last time on Don't Open That Door.
Oh my god. This is a 65. 65. Bruh, you can't say you're weak because you can't lift what you're gonna lift in a year.
What?
Huh?
Yes,
what?
actually, you can.
Yes, you can.
Look, it's not hot today if snowfall next week, bro.
That... No.
Bro, I'm about to cut off a chicken's head and write your name in blood after this podcast, bro.
Just go watch Bloodlust. This movie's fun, but go watch Bloodlust.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Don't Open That Door. I'm Justin, and I'm Dan's left-hand man.
I'm Nico, and I'm still shaking in my boots from last time when Justin cut the head off of a chicken and slathered blood all over his room in a ritual of violence against me.
Well, geez. I'm Dan, D's right-hand man.
And we're here today to review Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. Yes, you're goddamn right. So, this was directed by Yoshiaki Kawajiri, starring Andrew Philpott as the voice of
Good
D,
man.
Pamela Adlon as Layla, John Rafter Lee as Count Meyer, Wendy Lee as Charlotte, and John DiMaggio as Nolt Marcus. We open with Meyer, a member of the vampire nobility, and he's kidnapping Charlotte, a young woman, in the middle of the night. Her family realizes that if they want to save her, they need the best, and so they contract the legendary Dun Peel, as they say in this movie, or Dampier in real life, Vampire Hunter D, to rescue Charlotte from the clutches of the nobility. Hot on Charlotte's trail, D runs into the Marcus brothers, a group of vampire hunters who are also looking for the kidnapped woman. Layla, a member of the Marcus brothers, is injured in an attempt to kill Meyer, but, D bandages her wounds because he's a good guy. D also has a brief encounter with Meyer, who tells D that Charlotte came with him of her own free will. Now, naturally, D is skeptical, but could it be true? I don't know. Nico, what say you?
So, it seems like it might actually be, but at this point, Meyer and Charlotte flee to the Barbaroi, a group of mutants with supernatural powers, and hire 3 of them to protect them while they're en route to their eventual destination, which should be revealed later. The Barbaroi then managed to kill one of the Marcus brothers and temporarily trap D. But the Marcus brothers avenge their fallen sibling, and D breaks free with the help of his magical hand. And the pursuit continues. It sounds really fucking silly, but it's actually kind of cool, I promise. Layla then runs into D in a small village and witnesses firsthand, not that hand, how D is treated poorly by the people that he protects. Coincidentally, one of the villagers is actually someone D saved from the nobility back in the day. Recall from our previous review that the nobility are the OG super powerful vampire dudes from way back when. And so because of that, he helps D out, much to Leela's and everyone else's surprise. D and Layla then run into Charlotte, who professes her love for Meyer, surprisingly, to some. But unfortunately, D succumbs to heat syndrome, which is the Dun Peel version of heat stroke. So he, I shit you not, goes and lies down in a hole. But before that, Layla has to help him kill off another member of the Barbaroi while Charlotte and Meyer escape. And as they recover and just sort of get their ducks in a row, Layla and Dee each make a promise to each other that if one of them dies, the other will bring flowers to their grave.
Well, that's kind of sweet.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of sentimental from D, that cold, pale, moonlit humanity
sensible
form.
D. Sensitive D.
Exactly. I mean, every once in a while it is like that. But
An
Dan,
emotional D, even.
yeah, you're right about that too. But Dan, I need you to close this one off for us. What happens?
So Charlotte and Meyer continue to make their way to the castle of Carmilla, the Bloody Countess, who also happens to be a ghost. There, they can board a spaceship, and escape to the City of Stars. The Marcus brothers, sans Layla, intercept them, but they lose another member, and Meyer escapes with his beloved once again. Charlotte and Meyer arrive at Carmilla's mansion with Dee and the remaining Marcus brothers in hot pursuit. As it turns out, though, Carmilla is not a very hospitable host. She attacks Meyer and entrances Charlotte, draining her blood and fatally wounding her. As she drains Charlotte's life force, her physical form returns back to life. 2 more Marcus brothers die, leaving Layla the only member of the group left standing. The movie ends with Dee fighting Carmilla's spirit as Meyer fights her physical form. Carmilla begins to overpower Dee, but Dee calls on his ancestral heritage and murks the fuck out of her. Meyer has a quick skirmish with Dee, but Layla tosses Dee Charlotte's ring, which serves as proof of her death, thus his job is over. Dee and Layla leave as Carmilla's castle collapses, but Meyer manages to board the spaceship with his beloved and they escape to the City of Stars.
Aww.
Now we get a little bit of a time skip into the future as Dee witnesses Layla's funeral. He speaks to her granddaughter, letting her know that he fulfilled his promise, then heads off to do what he does best. The end.
Hell yeah. Yo, I'm so psyched. I am so excited to review this one. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's get started from the top, shall we? So looks, and I'm going to lead off with this one. This movie looks fucking great. So this is an anime joint, obviously, if you don't know already, and it came out in the year 2000. And I'm just going to say it holds up really, really, really well. The character designs are super detailed. The movie itself, just to, take a turn of phrase from Nico here, it oozes just like this gothic charm. And I mean, literally, when I looked at Carmilla's castle that they went to, I'm like, yo, this straight up could have been a dungeon or an area in like Dark Souls or Bloodborne or something like that. Like, straight up. It is so cool. I love the way it looks. And I just like everything about it. It just looks fucking fantastic to me. Just like top tier anime shit. But Dan, what do you think?
I agree with you. I really, really like how this looks. I mean, especially putting myself back to when it kind of came out, it looked really good, especially in 2000.
Yeah.
And I really like a lot of the character designs, and it's very unique. And it kind of encapsulates that sort of that era of like mid 90s to like mid 2000s, maybe, where like the characters are just all like very like unique and have like weird, crazy, cool powers, sort of like Ninja Scroll or Basilisk kind of thing. Like a lot of these characters are just, I mean, there's a werewolf in it. Okay, standard werewolf. Well, the mouth of the werewolf comes out of his stomach, like it's sort of standard werewolf powers, but like different, like a twist to it, which I think is really, really cool. So I really like the artwork and the character design and everything.
True enough. Nico, where you at with it?
Yeah, this is a visually stunning movie, and I am happy to say, just as I mentioned last time, this looks so much better than the other one. And would you imagine that? 15 years of progress in filmmaking and animation and, just like art. So like that makes sense from just a technical standpoint, but this is a beautiful piece of film and just it oozes style. It oozes, you can guess to take my turn of phrase there, it oozes style for sure. And it's just so vibrant and fun. It looks great. It's awesome.
So, Nico, it's funny that you said that this looks so much better because, believe it or not, there's actually a little bit of a reference. Apparently, Hideaki Kikuchi, the guy who writes the novels and stuff like that for D, he actually complained that he thought the original film looked kind of cheap. And he wanted whoever did it next to do a better job.
See? Great fucking minds.
So, basically, Studio Madhouse, they're the ones who ended up doing it. And if you don't know, like Madhouse has done like Attack on Titan, they've done a bunch of other shit. So it's crazy to see that even back then they were putting in work, bro. They were putting in work. So
hey man, good looks.
So they also did like looks. Wicked City, Ninja Scroll. They even did Perfect Blue, which we just reviewed. So they were really up on their shit. They were really up on their shit.
To them.
Well, at least I hope they did Attack on Titan. Maybe
Perfect Blue is a very different looking movie.
It is. So, taking it to the sound now, and I want to say this, I love all the sounds as well. The one thing for me that really stood out is when they get to Carmilla's castle, there are like one or two themes. They're like, there's one where the voices go like, ah, and it's just like, okay, it's obviously done way better than that. It's like this kind of chorus that almost kind of like hits like a screeching high. It's just crazy. I love the themes when they get to Carmilla's spot. but I bow the knee to Dan. I'm sure you probably got more than just that to say.
Well, I like a lot of the sound design too. I mean, the score is really cool, and a lot of it is also very operatic, very gothic sounding. A lot of organs and things too. Well, maybe not so much operatic, but a lot of choir, a lot of organ as well, especially at Carmilla's castle. But one thing that kind of stood out to me, especially near the end when we see like more fight scenes and stuff, is there's a lot of the sword noises aren't sort of your standard like swang, swing, swang kind of noises. They're like wobbly, they're like doing, kind of, except not quite as goofy sounding, but a little bit. Like I heard them, I was like, that sounds kind of goofy. But then I thought, you know what? Dee has a really long, thin sword. Pause. And it probably would sound kind of like that. Like it probably would make that kind of sound. And I actually read, I don't know exactly how true this is, but apparently the film director, Yoshiaki Kawajiri, sent the audio post supervisor videos of old traditional Japanese films, and he wanted to get the sound of the samurai swords the same because he wanted it to sound very traditional Japanese.
Damn.
Okay.
Which I think is kind of cool.
All right.
But I thought that was a very unique sound to it, not your standard sword sounds.
No, that's super cool, man.
Well, Nico, is there any other bits of sound that you really liked?
I did really dig the voice acting. I think that it was really, really well done. There wasn't any point at which there was any clear case of like this one guy just not taking his job seriously, or maybe they just like clearly miscast someone. Like everyone seems to fit the characters that they have, and they do a good job of bringing them to life.
Well, this movie's also very unique, isn't it, when it comes to English voice acting in anime?
It was actually one of the very few anime out there that was recorded in English first and not originally Japanese. It was originally English.
Taking it now to the meat and potatoes of the movie, I want to start with our star-crossed lovers in more ways than one. But our star-crossed lovers, Charlotte and Meyer. So how the fuck did they meet, do you think? Like, what would be the circumstances of the two of them meeting? Because it's no internet.
I don't know, but she would have to invite him in.
Hey, well, believe it or not, that's actually one of the few things you immediately notice from the opening right away that backs what Charlotte was saying. Because Meyer was able to walk straight into the house and take her away.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty
true.
cool.
That's facts.
That's a pretty cool detail right there. Dan, any thoughts from your end as to how our couple coupled?
I don't know. And I was kind of thinking about that when I watched the film. Because I feel like the only way that a human and a noble would meet is if the noble was like killing a bunch of people and draining their blood. So I would find it kind of hard to not only meet but also fall in love with them. Like in what circumstance would she see him and get to know him in a way that she could fall in love with him? You know what
Target run.
Maybe they're speed dating.
The only thing I can think of is we know that the frontier, which is where this movie takes place, is a land that's plagued by monstrosities. I can only assume that she was out at night and then he saved her. And from there, they probably just had little rendezvous or something like that at night. That would be the only plausible way. And, I want to maybe probe your mind a little bit here, Nico, because there are multiple scenes in the movie where Meyer kind of doesn't want to bite Charlotte. It's kind of the classic, like, turn me, Meyer. And he's like, I cannot. I will not condemn you to a life of darkness. And I'm just like,
yeah, pretty much.
I don't know. Like, do you think he would have eventually broken, though?
I think over time, like, once they got into the City of Stars, because remember, he says when they're talking earlier, he doesn't say no. He says, basically, we'll talk about this later kind of bit. Yeah. And I think if they would have gotten away from everyone and it would have been like just them, like I know in the fiction of the universe, like sometimes human vampire relationships like occasionally happened. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I'm sure that they would have had a chance to be, just someone or just some people to blend into the background scenery, but I don't know. I feel like if it was me, I might have been like, I mean, yeah, fuck it, why not at this point?
True. And it's a good note to what you brought up as well, because if you remember, the leader of the Barbaroi actually said I don't know if it's a dude or a chick or what, but they said that
that tiny little fucker?
Yeah. That basically, I've seen many done peels before. So it's like, wait a second, you've seen half vampires before. They made it seem like it wasn't something totally uncommon for them to have seen. So
I think it used to be kind of common, but I don't think there's too many more, because near the end, Dee's hand is like, you want to be the only Dampier around. Like, you don't want there to be another one. So
true.
Like, I don't think there's really any left. Maybe they were all killed or something.
By D, maybe. Nah, but that's a good point. That's a good point. Now, I want really quickly, we talked a little bit about the whole city in the stars type thing. And without getting too dark here, there is a little bit of a theory maybe, or a euphemism, the city in the stars. Dan, why don't you go ahead and lead into that a little bit?
Well, these two vampire and lover are trying to get to the city of stars, to get in a spaceship and go to space. And I was thinking about it, and I don't really know, I'm not super familiar with vampire lore, but I don't know any other vampire thing that has city of stars in there, or city in the stars. So I don't think it's a very common vampire thing, but I was thinking, vampires are weak to sunlight, right? They like die in the sunlight.
Yeah.
And if you go to space, it's just like all sunlight. There's no like nighttime or anything. So you're just in the sunlight. If you're in the city in the stars, I'd imagine there's a bunch of stars around. So like, I feel like that's their ultimate weakness. And if you're in space and there's no humans to feed on, wouldn't you just like die eventually? And also Carmilla mentioned something that where back in the heyday of nobility in the golden age, when they all like left to the city of stars.
Yeah.
She mentioned something about like, she was always thought that the spaceships were kind of dubious and might not even work. Like she mentioned something like that.
She did. She said, I don't even know if this will work or not.
I know that she said, I don't know if this spaceship will work, but also she made some comment about like just that whole era and people leaving, that she was like, I don't think that this exists, or can't remember what she said, but she was like,
or like, it's not for me or something.
It's something like that. Yeah. So I don't know. It kind of makes me think that maybe like city of stars in the stars is like a euphemism for suicide or something, like the end of the vampires.
So you have no idea how much you fucked me up when you brought that up in the pre-production meeting, and just saying it now, because three things. First, there's differences between the books and the anime movies. And having read the books and a lot of the books, there's like some very deep lore in them that basically says the vampires did go up into outer space, and they determined that for whatever reason, when they were in outer space, the sun didn't hurt them at all. Like they were chilling. But, and I say, but the one thing I do want to point out is that lore hadn't even been written when this book that this movie was based on came out. So I don't know if that was ever taken into consideration. Secondly, I think the City of Stars, whether or not it was originally intended to be suicide for Meyer and Charlotte, ended up being that way for Meyer. I'm pretty certain he's taking her up there and then he's going to kill himself. So it's funny because I don't know if like initially...
How does a vampire kill themselves?
Stake themselves.
Imagine...
Yeah, okay.
Do they need air? So if you shoot yourself out of the airlock, I imagine...
Yeah, you could do that too, I guess. Also, in terms of food, I remember reading as well that like... So in Kikuchi-san's kind of like world, the vampires basically had like stupid science on the level of like magic and beyond. Like food, like nothing was a concern for them. And that's kind of one of the overarching themes, that when society, or when, I guess society, reaches a point where they want for nothing, where their growth has basically superseded every single want or desire they could have, all that is left is the inevitable decline. And that, it's like the whole phrase from Dracula in the earlier joints, like such transcendent guests, or that wasn't the word, whatever the word. Transient, thank you.
He says that
such transient guests. And it was referring to the fact that like they were going to be gone. So there's that side of it. But all in all, Dan, I do appreciate the interpretation, because I definitely think that's fair. Now, Nico, to kind of loop you on in on here, well, we've spoken about vampire lore before and after D, but I want to know just some new shit in this movie. What'd you think of Carmilla and just all the powers that she had, even as a fucking ghost?
I thought she was super fucking cool. I loved her whole just gravitas that she had to herself. Like, you could tell she was an absolutely regal motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like, she had a very queenly vibe about her. And I don't know if this was established in the movie, but in looking up the like cast and characters for doing the planning for this, I read that that's supposed to be like the Vampire Hunter D-verse take on Elizabeth Bathory, which is fucking sweet as hell. And like, again, maybe they included that in some like scene that I wasn't paying attention to, but I mean, I just thought that she was a super fucking cool character with her abilities to like project herself and like a lot of these illusions and sort of like the dream states that she sends our protagonists into later is kind of like an obstacle for them later on when they're trying to, get out. I thought she was cool as hell, man.
For sure. Dan, what'd you think about Carmilla?
I liked her, and I mean, I just pretty much echo whatever Nico said too. I mean, I think her scenes were some real cool, like mind-fucky kind of scenes too. When Meyer and Charlotte first gets there, like he gets cut in half.
Yeah.
But then you still see him in the building, but you realize later that's Carmilla like projecting him, whatever. It's really like kind of twisted and it makes you think about what's going on, and almost like you're like on psychedelics or something. It's kind of cool though.
It's kind of surreal at times.
Yeah, very surreal.
It is. And that's probably what I appreciated most about her character in the movie. She was a good showing of quote unquote soft power from vampires. Oftentimes, movies are very good at showing us vampires being super strong, super fast, super durable. But there's a whole host of other abilities that they have as well. So I thought she did a really good job of showcasing a bunch of those, particularly because as she was a ghost. I thought it was hilarious that she's like, Dracula just showed up and killed the shit out of me. Mm-hmm. I was just like, yo, that's kind of funny. And then it's ironic that his son then basically murked her for real this time. But another thing I wanted to talk about was we spoke before about just generally Dee as a Dhampir and his powers and where he fits into vampire lore. Most of the movie in terms of vampire abilities, aside from Carmilla, was pretty much by the numbers. But I did want to point out real quick how much of a Gary Stu / Mary Sue overpowered person on a scale from 1 to 10 was Dee in this movie? And do you think he had anyone that was like a real challenge for him to fight? Or was Dee just here just to kick ass and take names?
I think he was just kicking ass. This man could walk on water. He literally skipped his way across water before.
Yeah,
he did.
And his hand is constantly, the whole movie, the hand's like, "No, you shouldn't do that. This is dangerous." And he's just like, man, let me just jump on some fucking sand mantas and then fucking, the sunlight? Oh, I don't give a fuck. And yeah, he almost died there. But like, he was in it for a fucking minute.
He was.
There was a moment where they're like in the middle of that sort of like sunny heat stroke, whatever the fuck heat sickness thing that's going on there, where Dee even collapses like on the ground, seemingly, like he's in trouble. Like, oh fuck, he just collapsed on the ground. And then like 2 minutes later, he does a fucking cartwheel kick up and then like kills 3 dudes and jumps up a pillar and then collapses again. Like, it's insane how strong he is. He's got to be, if not 10 out of 10, like 9 point something out of 10.
See, I love just how he's so fucking hacks. Like, he literally carries around a medallion that blocks 99% of like weapons of the nobility, so they can't really hurt him that way. His hand like basically is the anti-spell, anti-everything.
What is the origin of that?
His dad gave that to him.
Oh. How you give someone a hand?
Like, the origin is still kind of debated, and there have even been some people who suggested that the hand is actually a member of the Barbaroi, or like was in some way related to the Barbaroi, but kind of past all that, the hand was basically something that Dracula gave to Dee, and it's just super hacks. It's just super hacks. Like, anytime Dee's in trouble, he's like, hand, assist me.
But what I liked about Dee though is Like, obviously he's super powerful. And I know, like, in some of the books, he actually does get kind of fucked up. But in the movies and in a good number of the books, like, he can tank anything.
He just fucks everything
fine.
up, yeah.
But it's more about the character developments and that happen within the books. And is this prestige horror?
Oh.
But it's, about the interplay between the characters and Dee's personality and all that kind of stuff.
I oftentimes feel like Dee is not the main character in any of these stories. I feel like Dee is like somebody who showed up and is like a part of the story, but
he's just there.
Yeah, like Charlotte and Maya are the main characters of this story.
Yeah.
They really are. So that's interesting. And also, real quick, before I forget, just some quick differences between the book and the movie. I don't want to spend too much time on it because obviously the movie should stand on its own. But you know how we talked about how much we like Carmilla?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no Carmilla in the book.
Nice.
Well,
they just head to like where they believe there's like a spaceport or like a space station or whatever else like that. And I don't even think there's a rocket there to take them to the City of the Stars. I don't think so. There might be, but I'm not 100% on that. There may have been. Don't quote me on that. But there's definitely no Carmilla. And Layla's backstory is much more of a oof. I'm going to leave it at that. And those brothers are not good to her at all. At all. I'm gonna say that as well.
Oh.
So... yeah, like the movie was like much better. And there's also a reason why. That's why they had the whole thing. They felt so bad about it that they even had the scene in the movie where Dee like was going to bring her flowers at her funeral and shit. And Dee like talked to her, which for those who aren't like massive fans of the series, the fact that Dee actually talked to her like 2 sentences is like a god tier interaction with Dee. Like no one gets that much out of Dee ever. So,
it's kind of funny that like, they build Dee up like this, but if you've only ever seen the movies, because that shit happens in the first movie too.
Yeah, I know.
In the first movie, he quote unquote falls in love with this human girl, right? So in 2 out of 2 movies, this man has a lot of feelings for somebody who doesn't have feelings.
Yeah, that's a hell of a track record.
True enough. And
but also everyone's in love with him. Like he goes into this fucking hive of scum and villainy, the fucking Barbaroi, and the first thing out of this big dude's, or not big, it's actually really tiny, this tiny dude's mouth is like, my God, we've seen a lot of dumb peers, but you're quite sexy looking, aren't you, huh?
I mean,
well, dude, that's the thing.
He does have skin smooth.
He was
pale.
moonlight and darkness personified. One glance
Everyone
upon
wants
him.
to jump Dee's bones, man.
Hey, that's literally the movie, bro. I hate to break it to you. That's literally the movie. Also, real quick, so the Marcus brothers, though, in the movie now, I want to talk about them. There's some, pretty badass hunters and whatnot.
There's some bros.
They are some bros. I think the one that stands out for me the most, though, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is Grove. Yeah. So Grove is this dude who...
Grove is so fucking cool.
He's this dude who's been like... He's basically stuck in a hospital bed, more or less, but he's in this tank. He's just sitting in the back of the tank in a bed. And his power is whenever he has a seizure, he enters this like phantasm ghost mode where he can like blast fools with energy beams and like he's immune to physical attacks. So I don't know, man. That's pretty hacks. Actually, the story goes...
was that in the book too?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
He was actually healthier. He's way healthier at one point, but they kept putting him into seizures and stuff like that to use his power. So over time, he became more and more bedridden.
Makes sense.
Because they kept spamming his power. So that's unfortunate. But you have, like one dude who's like an archer, most hacks archer ever. They got a big dude who can like swing a hammer. He dies like instantly. And they have another dude who has like a little like cross blade type deal and he gets burked too. So
he reminded me of Krillin.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Damn.
I don't know. Oh, well, I mean, one, his Destructo Disc type thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, other than that, I don't know why, but his like attitude reminded me of Krillin in a weird way because he's not really like Krillin at all, but I don't know.
But now it's time for the what would you do? So really and truly, I try to come up with this and summarize this in one kind of question, and this is the best I could do. So let's say, like we're going to just have to do some suppositions here, but let's say you were in Dee's shoes and you saw that, the two of them were like madly in love or whatever else like that. Would you have let them go? Let's say, just for the sake of argument, that you kill Carmilla and Charlotte lives. Like Charlotte doesn't die. She's okay. Both her and Meyerlink are okay. would you have let the two of them go to the City of Stars? Or would you have insisted that you take Charlotte back? Because at the end of the day, Meyer's a vampire. He can't fight what he is, and she'll be happier without him.
I think I would have let them go. I probably would have been like, hey, give me your ring or something so that I can collect my money, my 10 mil.
Oh, shit.
Or 20 mil, sorry. 20 mil.
Yeah, like I absolutely would have run a con on them.
But, like, you know, you're not going to hurt anybody if you're in the fucking space in the City of Stars. You ain't doing shit here. So, yeah. And I think, I mean, I would probably have gotten a little sentimental like he did in the sense that his mom was human and he sees in Carmilla's like fever dream illusion thing, you know, she says like, I'm sorry I brought you into this world, but I really loved your father. You know, sort of humanized Charlotte. And,
literally.
Yeah. Charlotte and Meyer's relationship, you know, it is possible. It happened to his parents.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I agree. I think I would have let them go in the end. It's kind of one of those things where, now granted, the way I would have done it is I would have been like, bite her. Because once she's technically not alive anymore, remember, like, that was it. Bring her back if she's alive.
Nah.
But if she's a vampire...
He was supposed to kill her.
Yeah, he's supposed to kill her. But I'm saying, like, going off to the City of Stars, I mean, I could rationalize that. I would literally go back, give them the ring, and be like, she's not alive anymore. And I would have left it at that, personally. Like, it is kind of like a misrepresentation, but I would take it like that. Because I agree with you. Like, they're not going to hurt anyone if they're in outer space. What are they going to do? They can't come back. Mm-hmm. So...
That's not a white lie. That's like an off-white lie.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, I still lied like shit, but it's okay. It's for the greater good.
Very subtly.
So now, it's time for the critical review. And where do you think this is on Rotten Tomatoes? We're talking about from the critics now. Where do you think this ranks?
I'm going to say 84.
Yeah, I'll say I'll say 83.
Yes. Surprisingly, Nico takes it.
God damn it, Nico! Every week.
No, listen, is that what you think, though? It's a 72 from the critics on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh.
Nico gets it because he went 1% lower, but Nico gets it like every week. Dude is great. So I want to ask you now, why don't you go ahead, give me just a brief kind of consensus, if you will, of your general thoughts on the movie, maybe your favorite scene, and then your score. And who wants to lead off here?
You do, Justin.
Well, fair enough. So I love this movie. I love this movie. It's an hour and like 40 minutes, but it doesn't feel like it. The pacing's great. Like, I remember my cousin showed this movie to me when I was a youngin', and then literally I like made it my mission to show like all my friends Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. Like, it's such a good movie. Even if you're like not a fan of anime or not a fan of vampires, you're still gonna fucking like this movie. It's really good. It looks incredible. Pacing's great. I just love every aspect of this movie. My favorite scene, God, I go back and forth because there's just so many fucking cool scenes in this movie. Right now, with the way that I'm feeling, probably my favorite scene is where Carmilla basically entrances Charlotte, and she's basically like looking like Meyer, and then, you know, Charlotte's blood gets drained and the blood runs down like these red steps and like, you know, kind of like revitalizes Carmilla's corpse, because Carmilla historically shows up in a lot of vampiric texts and stuff like that. She's literally in the Castlevania anime. And, you know, like, she's in the Castlevania games, and, you know, like, Carmilla is probably, if to be honest, aside from Alucard, Carmilla is probably the second most, aside from Dracula, repeated vampire in history. Like, aside from those two, I should say. But yeah, that's my favorite scene, and honestly, this movie just fucking slaps. It's a 96 for me.
I really, really like this movie. I love the visuals. Again, like I mentioned earlier on, like the character design and everything is I think, amazing. I really like the character development throughout the show, and the more, you know, the action scenes are really cool, but it's not all about the action scenes as well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give it a 95. And my favorite scene, one, because you already kind of touched on it, was like the whole Carmilla part there with the blood draining and everything. But two would be when Layla tries to trick the town into kicking D out of the town, and she tells them all that he's a Dampier or Dumpeel, and he like goes to buy a horse from this guy, and then the sheriff runs in and And it's like, no, you can't do that. And the guy who bought the horse, or who sold him the horse, was the guy that Dee saved as a little kid. And sort of that whole story I really liked, and that sort of history there I thought was pretty cool. But yeah,
and he also busts out like a big ass fucking gun to shoot the sheriff with.
Yep.
Fucking rail gun or some shit.
Yeah.
I thought that was comical for a second, and then like, oh shit.
Yeah. So now, Nico, where are you at with it?
So I also fucking love this movie. I was extremely pleasantly surprised by how much this really truly does hold up, and just again how much better it is than the first one. My God, like, it is a visual delight. It is a really fun story, and there's just so much to the character design and the world detailing that's going on, and just the whole general atmosphere. It's just so fucking cool. I am also going to give this one a 95. Oh, and my favorite scene was when the Marcus brothers were first introduced with their little like armored van thing, and they just murked the hell out of like 1,000 fucking ghouls.
Yeah.
That was so goddamn cool.
It was pretty fucking cool. I ain't gonna lie. So obviously we all rated it really high, so I'm gonna assume we all recommended it. Now, Golden Seal?
Yeah, I'm with it.
Yeah. Nico is looking real hard right now. Whoa! Nico is looking very intently.
Wow!
I was gonna say he's looking real hard into the camera, but I like paused. Nico's looking very intently.
Yeah, Golden
Run
Seal.
that back.
On to the next bit.
Run that back, bro. Golden Seal. So Nico, Golden Seal of approval, yeah?
Yeah.
All right then, bet.
Yeah. 100%.
All right then. Stamp. Yo. You know what's funny?
What's funny?
I don't know how far back you'd have to go to find 2 consecutive Golden Seals of approval.
You're right.
Because we
Actually,
gave we gave the last movie one as well. Interesting.
There was a real fucking dearth for a long time too.
There was. Any last words before we wrap this one up? So there is something for me actually. This movie, I watched it at a pretty young age, and it was literally this movie and the novel Dracula. Like, I was introduced to both of them by my cousin kind of roundabouts the same time. And literally, this movie kind of espouses one of the biggest things I love about, just in general, kind of like vampiric lore and stuff like that. Like, I enjoy just, as an aside, just seeing all the different, like, cool stories that there can be that fit within this kind of stuff. Like, there literally could have been a whole movie just about the Barbaroi. Like, there literally could have been, like, a whole movie just about killing Carmilla. So, like, I do really enjoy just, like, generally all the lore and everything. And, like, it's stuff like this that really got me into vampires and horror in the bigger scale as well, you know? Because that was kind of, you know, like, my turning point from, like, chicken shit to, like, able to watch horror movies. So, this movie definitely holds, like, a very special place in my strong red-blooded heart.
Yeah, I mean, similar to me too. I mean, I think this is one of, if not the first anime that I've ever seen. Maybe caught like an episode.
That's a
here
hell
or
of
two.
a first anime. Holy shit!
I know. I probably had caught an episode or two of Dragon Ball Z or something on TV, but on like Toonami back in the day. But I mean, I watched this when I was, I don't know, 11, 12, something like that.
Yeah.
And you know, there are definitely some scenes where I was like, oh shit. But it was, I mean, sentimental for me as well.
Yeah. Well, if you like this movie, or if you don't, I mean, if you don't, fuck you. But if you don't, you know, definitely hit us up on Twitter and Instagram at DOTD Horror. We're also on Facebook. Just don't open that door. And as always, you can catch everything we've ever done on our website. That's dotdhorror.com. But till then, take care of one another. Have compassion in your heart. And as always, dear listener, don't open that door. Bye.